Welcome to this tutorial for the Cessna Citation CJ4. We're going to do a full flight from cold and dark, so let's get started. Startup is fairly simple, so you turn on the battery, see the generators are already on, set the avionics to dispatch. With that done, we can head down to the center console and we'll switch on the right engine starter. Once the starter is activated, you want to monitor the N2, and when that hits 20%, we can pop back down to the center console, flip the cover off, and set engine 2 to run. Then we monitor the M1, and when the M1 hits 20%, we have a good start on engine number 2. So we now repeat the process for engine number 1, turn on the left engine starter, monitor the N2 till it's 20%, then when it is, down to the center console, remove the cover, engine number 1 to run, monitor the M1, and when the M1 of engine 1 is 20%, we have a good start on both engines. Then just flick Avionics Master 2 on and turn on your lights. I'm also turning on the anti-ice here for convenience, but obviously you can wait until you see ice if you wish. And once we've switched on all the lights, so the beacon, the nav, logo lights, all of that good stuff, we can go down to the FMC and just configure a few bits in the perf pages. There's not a lot to do here. You go index, takeoff, set your takeoff flaps here 15, and with that we can insert the V-speeds just by clicking on the soft keys, and that's your FMC stuff done. A quick note, when you switch on the anti-ice you'll get a warning, you can just safely clear that away. We can now head up to the MCP and set up our autopilot, so flight director goes on, nav mode goes on. We now dial in the initial altitude we've been given by ATC, so that's 8,000 in this case. We'll switch on the yaw damper. We'll activate flight level change mode and we'll set our desired climb speed to 250 below 10,000 feet. We then set flaps 15 for takeoff and taxi out to the runway. Once we're lined up, bring the throttles to the takeoff detent, and just after V1 at rotate speed, we rotate. When we have positive rate, bring the gear up. We'll now manually follow the flight director until we're comfortable enough to turn on the autopilot, which is fairly shortly afterwards. You can see it here. We'll put the throttles in their climb detent. We now enter a stable climb on our nav path at 250 knots to 8,000 feet. There's no auto throttle on this plane, so ascent speed is managed by pitch. We've been given a step climb here of 11,000, so we just dial that in. As we're already climbing, it will automatically continue its climb to 11,000. And above 10,000 feet, we can increase our target speed to 300 knots. So when you reach your top of climb, you want to manually adjust the throttle to maintain your target speed. So you want to keep the pink indicator on the PFD within the blue diamond that represents your target speed. We'll also show that in more detail through the next phases of flight, so you can get a better idea of how that works. Now, at top of descent, we set our first target altitude. We'll engage flight level change mode and bring the throttles back to idle. This is where the aircraft will start to descend to our initial descent altitude, which is 8,000 feet here. As we pass through 10,000 feet, we'll want to change our target speeds to 250 knots and the aircraft adjusts its pitch accordingly. As we level off here, we can see in a little bit more detail the manual throttle adjustment required to maintain our target speed. So the pink line on the PFD tape that's moving up and down is showing the current direction that our speed is increasing or decreasing. As we adjust the throttle manually, we can keep that pink line within the middle of our blue diamond representing our target speed. As we're close to the destination, we'll take a look at tuning our nav radio. So you go to tuning here, it's already tuned, but I'm going to demonstrate how to insert an ILS frequency on the scratch pad. We're then given a step descent to 3,000 feet and a speed restriction of 180 knots. So we set the target altitude to 3,000, we set the target speed to 180 knots, press flight level change and idle the throttles. The plane manages its pitch to maintain our target speed of 180 during the descent. Then when we level off again, we just balance that throttle As we get closer to the airport, we'll want to set our approach speed, so we set the target speed to 100 knots. We'll then idle the throttle to start that deceleration. As we decelerate, we will apply approach flaps and drop the gear, then balance the throttle to maintain 100 knots. And now it's time for our approach. As we begin our final turn towards the airport, we activate approach mode, and on the PFD here, as soon as we intercept the localizer, our LNAV annunciator will change to localizer. You can see that it's at a set altitude waiting to intercept the glide slope. Then when that happens, the annunciator for altitude changes over to glide slope and the aircraft pitches down. Remember, at this point, this is where you want to manage that throttle to maintain your approach speed of 100 knots. You can see here on final approach, we're on our glide slope at a good angle of attack and our target speed. So as we get closer to the airport, we can switch off the autopilot and manually fly down onto the runway. As we get a little bit closer to the ground, I'll bring the throttles back to idle and we'll pretty much just glide it down onto the tarmac. Once we touch down, we'll bring that nose down, apply the brakes, and that is a successful flight in the Cessna Citation CJ4. We'll taxi to parking and shut the aircraft down. Thank you for watching. If you did find this useful, please drop a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, because I make this kind of content fairly regularly. Until next time, take care.